Welcome to this beginner's guide of Firebase. In this video, we're going to cover what Firebase actually is and then set up Firebase for a project of our own. So I guess the first place to really start is asking, well, what actually is Firebase? Well, in a nutshell, Firebase is a comprehensive platform by Google that offers various tools and services for building and managing web and mobile apps. This crash tutorial will guide you through the setting up of Firebase and integrating some of its core features into a simple web application. And I'm going to go through some of the very important core features now to give you an idea of what we'll be setting up. So Firebase provides backend services like real-time databases, authentication, cloud storage for things like images, hosting for your website and your databases, and essentially it allows developers to build apps without managing servers. If you don't have great backend skills and you've never done backend before and you want to focus on being a front-end developer, this is a great middle ground technology to learn. Firebase really allows you to move quickly to create databases very fast and very cheaply. So this is a really great first step into full stack development and getting an idea how backend and front end work together. So this isn't going to be too heavy on the backend side, so it should make it friendly enough to be able to jump into. Now the first 2 points here are the most important: real-time databases and authentication, both of which we are going to cover either in this video or subsequent videos. Cloud storage, more to do with hosting images and files off the Firebase cloud storage. And finally, hosting. Now that we know the basics of what Firebase is, let's actually make a project in Firebase to truly show how powerful and quick and easy it is to get set up with a database of your very own. So let's get started. So this is firebase.google.com. Now, it comes as no surprise by that URL that Firebase is actually owned by Google, and it was made by Google, and it was their solution to pair with Angular a really simple and easy way to create a backend for your application. This is one of the most popular forms of getting set up for an application really quickly. So if we go to firebase.google.com and we go here to get started, and it'll probably prompt you to log into your Google account. I've logged into mine. And you can see if you've got any projects already, if you've ever played with Firebase before, they'll show here. But if you've never done that before, then go up here and click Create a Project. And we'll put Firebase Project and we'll click Continue. And it's asking us if we want Google Analytics for our project. And we'll say not for now, but that is something that you can do. You can have a look at the analytics of your project if you want. And we'll create our project. And then we'll just wait for it to load and let the spinner go all the way around, and we're done. And that's it. Your Firebase project is ready. This is the dashboard for Firebase. So we can see that we've got support here for iOS and Android devices, and we've got support for web devices here as well. Now, what we want to do is focus on this section for the web. That's what we're going to be building in. So we'll click web here and we'll register an app. So we'll call it Firebase tutorial, and you can ask if you want to set up Firebase hosting for this app. We won't need to do that because we'll upload it somewhere else. We'll register, and then we'll be presented with our configuration file. Brilliant. And we're going to go to our React project. So if you remember the React project we did when we first set up React in our very first React video, we'll just use that project here. So I'll just delete all of this, put this in a fragment and delete all of this. Okay, oops, delete all of this. Now, one of the first things we need to do is, now that we've tidied that up, is actually install Firebase. So we'll do npm install Firebase. And you can do this in your terminal and just let that install. And brilliant, that's all done. And then in our app.js here, we just want to initialize the app. We can delete all of this now. So we're calling the method initialize app from Firebase/app. So make sure you import that. And then we want to create an object here, which is called Firebase config, and it's an object. And we've got our API key, auth domain, our project ID, our storage bucket, messenger sender ID, and our app ID. And then we just need to initialize it. Okay, we can close this terminal down again. Now, we just need to make sure we get the correct Firebase config. So we'll go back to our Firebase console in the web and then just grab this Firebase config, go back and just paste it into here. So that's our Firebase config here with our API key, our auth domain, our project ID, storage bucket, messenger sender ID, and app ID. Make sure though, if you push this up to GitHub, that you don't actually push these details up, that you use environment variables for that. So as we've shown you earlier, you can create environment variables by creating a .env.local file or just a .env file. And then what you want to do is for each one of these, you create a key. So for example, here, if we just do multiple cursors on all of these using option left click, and then we do an equal signs. Okay, get rid of all these commas, just align all these, and just make sure that they are all uppercase, as is the standard. Now, one thing I would suggest, in fact, let's do these as single messaging sender ID underscore ID, is before every single one, I would add a Firebase prefix, just so not to confuse it with any of your other environment variables. And then all you would do is you would go here, and where it says API key here, you would just say process.env, and you would go Firebase underscore API underscore key, and that would essentially connect it to this. So process.env is essentially a way to connect it to this. And we can test that by if we put this into a paragraph element, put it in curly brackets. Okay, so one thing I forgot to do is make sure the start of each of these variables, because we're using Vite, to expose it, we need to add Vite underscore to be able to do it. And then within here, if we want to access it, let's say, for example, the API key, we'll create a paragraph element here, and we'll just have curly brackets, and I'll go import.meta.env, and this accesses env file and imports it in. And then we go Vite underscore Firebase underscore API key, and this should grab the API key here. So if I refresh that now, I can now see that this is bringing in our API key. So all I need to do is just copy and paste that, and then just replace it here and start replacing all of these. And then once I have replaced all of these, I can simply just go Vite underscore auth underscore domain, change that one, project ID, storage underscore bucket, messaging sender ID, and then finally app ID. And that should connect it up to our environment variables here, and that protects us from exposing it to malicious attacks or people who might be trying to steal that information. And then we can use this if we're deploying it, for example, to Vercel, by essentially adding the environment variables to wherever we're deploying it then, and then putting in these individual details. It means we never save this information on GitHub, because if you do, somebody is probably going to hack this and start running up costs on here, which will then be incurred for you. So be very careful putting sensitive information like this that could cost you money onto GitHub. Always use environment variables to protect yourself. Okay, so now that we're here, let's actually use this information. Now, to show that this has successfully worked, what I want to do is actually console log the Firebase session here, just to show that it is working. So I want to make sure that the app is initialized. So I'm going to console log this, and we'll go and have a look. So I'll refresh this, and there you go. You can see that Firebase app is working, and it's returned this object of data. In it includes some information. So for example, automatic data collection enabled. We have selected false because we don't want our data to be collected. And then within here, we have some other information about the config, the container, some of the providers, and just some basic information on the config and a few other options. So these are options that we already knew about that we have put into our project. Seems like we've got Firebase into our React application, and we can start using it. Now what we're going to do is we are going to test to see if a certain collection and document exists in Firebase, and if it does, we are going to console log that it has been successful. So let's go to Firebase now. So I'm going to go to build on the left here and go to Firestore database, which is where the database is held. So remember that it's called Firestore. Once it loads, we notice that there is no database here right now. So we're going to go create one. So we'll create a database and we'll set it to Europe. You can set it to wherever you want. You can set it to the States or Europe. It's up to you. We'll click next and we'll start in test mode. So this just allows us to read and write to the database right now for 30 days. If we set it to production mode, we then have to go through different security settings to allow us to read and write to it. So we'll start in test mode for now. So we're setting up our Firestore. Just wait for it to load. And once that's done, we can start building. So we can see here it says start collection and it says your database is ready to go. Just add some data. Now you can do this programmatically through your app, but we're just going to do it manually for now to do some checks. So I'll go start collection and I'll call it test collection and I'll say test document and I'll click save, and there we go. So we've created some data here. It's currently got nothing in it at the moment, so we'll just add some information and I'll put name and I'll put Harry Ashton as the value. I'll add that. I'll add another field. We'll call it age and I'll put 9001, and that's just I think that's enough metadata to test that this works. So let's go ahead to our app and just make sure that we can access this information. So initially we initialized our app with the Firebase config, but now that we have access to Firebase, we also want to get access to the database, which is stored in Firestore. So we're going to call on the Firestore here and pass in our app config, and we're going to do it through creating a variable called db. And I'm going to import get Firestore, which is what we're using here, from Firebase /Firestore. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a asynchronous function that basically calls on Firestore. So I'll do async function test Firestore, and then I will do a doc ref const, and I'll call on the doc method and I'll pass in the database. And I will search for test collection and also test document. And I'll close the line. And then I'll also make a const doc snap because I want to get a snapshot of the database. And then I'll do an await on that. And I'll use the get doc method and I'll pass the doc ref. And then I'll do a quick check. Oops, just delete the T. And then I'll do a quick check. So if the doc snap exists, which is a native method on it, I'll console log document data and then docsnap.data, then close this line off and then do an else and do console.log no search document. And then just at the bottom here, I'll test the Firestore. So that's just calling the function we have created. Now we need to make sure that we're importing the correct things. So we want to grab doc and we want to grab get doc as well, which is what we're using down here. So doc and get doc. Okay, and I think that should be enough. So let's go take a look. Go to our project, refresh that, and there we go. We can see the information that we put into the database has been found, and it's actually returned us the information that we put in. And then programmatically, you can also send that information up to the database as well. I'll go back here and just change this to Firestore check, and just above here I'm going to create a new function which essentially updates specific fields. So we'll do await update doc, which is another method that we can call from Firestore, and we'll just change the age. So age at 9002, let's say, and then we'll say name equals Larry McBarry. And then just down here where it says doc snap, we're just going to check to see if the snapshot of the document still exists. That's fine. And then we'll say just here updated document data, and then we'll pass in the snapshot data, but otherwise that should be fine. Okay, let's go take a look. So we'll refresh this now. Oh, update doc is not defined, so we'll just pass update doc as an import up here. Refresh this. Doc ref is not defined. Right, so what we need to do is actually pass this into here, so just above here, and put it within the test firestore function so it has access to the doc ref, and then it should all be fine. So if I refresh this now, it says that updated document data is 9001. But if I refresh it, you can then see that it then does another call and it has actually updated it. Now, the best way to do it is probably have done a button where you click it and then it reactively changes it. But that gives you an idea of how you can update your Firestore as well as receive information from it. And very quickly, you can see how you can use this in your UI. So if within here then, in the paragraph element, I want to pass the name, all I simply do is put in some curly brackets and go docsnap.data like this and .name. But doing that just alone won't actually get me the information. The best way to get this information is actually pass it into state. So grab this and I'll just make some state here using the useState hook. So just within here, I'll create const name set name equals useState, and then just make sure I import that. So import useState from React. So that is now connected. And then I will grab this logic here and bring this into a use effect, create a anonymous function and then pass it into there. And then I'll create an empty dependency array, which means this is only going to run once and it isn't just going to keep running and running and running. And then just grab this test firestore here and just put it at the bottom. So that is actually what we're running in the use effect. And then just here where it says if the docsnap exists, we're actually not going to console log. What we're going to do is use our hook here, pass this, and what we're going to say is we're going to set the state here of name from the document snapshot from Firestore, and that should work. And then all we do is we call on name from state here, so I'll pass in name. Then if I go to the website and refresh, oh, well, we forgot to import use effect as well. So let's quickly do that. Okay, go back here and refresh, and we can see that this is coming in from the database. And then I can change this name again. If I go to here and I change this to Mary Poppins, if I spell that correctly, is it one? We'll do the one. And then you can see that instantly in real time, because we're using a use effect, changes that straight away. It's very, very quick. And you can see that it's almost like the database is on your computer. That's how fast Firebase and Firestore is. And then you can change this again, +++, and you refresh it. And again, instantly, it has changed the database for you. Incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. So you can see how powerful Firebase and Firestore can be. And anybody can get set up with a project really fast and import it into React and get going. Like, there's not a lot of boilerplate here. And if you learn this method of protecting your API key variables, this is a great skill to learn as a professional front-end developer. And if you show off this skill in an interview, it'll be quite impressive to say the least. So make sure you get your head around how to save environment variables and put them in a .env file in the root of your folder. And if, for example, you wanted to push this up to Vercel, you would save this project. We'll do that now. So we'll go ahead to GitHub and create a project. So go to github.com, create a new project, and we'll call it Firestore tutorial or Firestore tutorial. We'll create the repo. We'll just copy and paste the git remote add origin bit. Clear this. We'll go git init, obviously, and then we'll remote add everything. We'll just check to see what it's adding. .env, no, we don't want to commit that, so I'll remove that in a moment. Package lock, public, source, yeah, everything else is fine. Just need to go to git ignore, and we want to hide the .env file. What we can do is we can have a fake env file, so we can go .env.dist, and essentially what this means is this is just a distribution file. So if I copy that and put it here, and then within all of these, replace these with insert key here. And essentially you can then just put your own key inside here and that should work just the same. So I'll do git status again, and it is committing our environment dist, which is fine. So I'll git add all, git adds Firestore tutorial project, and then it's just going to add all of that. I'll clear that, and then just git push. It'll give us the command we need, and I'll push that up. Okay, and then if I refresh this, it now has the Firestore tutorial project on here. And all I want to do is I want to go to Vercel now, which is where we're going to update this. I'm going to click add new project. I'm going to automatically be shown the Firestore tutorial. I'm going to click import, and this is the important part. So I mean, it's a little bigger. We can see here that it automatically knows it's Vite, but in actuality, it's actually Vite React. I'm sure it will figure that out. Root directory is correct. And here where it says environment variables, we're going to open that up and we're going to start adding our environment variables. So go here and grab each and every one of these. So if you can copy paste the whole line, and then you just go here and paste that in, and it automatically does both for you. So just grab each line, paste it in, keep going, and that's all of them. So yeah, you don't have to put each individual one in. You can just copy and paste it once and it'll do it. Right, so we'll click deploy, let that go ahead, and it starts the deployment sequence on Vercel. And again, if you haven't signed up to Vercel, I would highly recommend it. It works extremely well with Vite and React, and it's very clever, more so than other free hosting platforms out there for developers. Vercel has a lot of core React developers on the team, and that's why it just works so much better. And there we go. That has deployed. So that's the Firestore check project. Let's go and continue to dashboard, and let's go check out the project. So if we go here and click this link, Firestore check Mary Poppins. Now, I can also change this locally on my computer, and it should actually change this in the database here and update this website. So if I go to my project and I go down to here and I change this to Freddie Mercury, go back here, and if I refresh this, it's changed it on the Vercel deployment, and it's also changed it if I refresh this. Now it changed it for a moment, but because the code is still the same, the use effect on the server overrides it, or the deployed application. So then if I push this change up, change his name to Freddie, and git push that, so I can do that all on one line. And then I go here and I can see, and if I go to deployments, I can see there's a deployment currently running for this project, and it tells you how long it's running for. Now the last one took 23 seconds, so I'd imagine it would take the same. And there we go, that was done in 19 seconds. And that is the latest one on there. If I refresh this now, it should say Freddie Mercury. And if I go to the database, it's updated there as well. Now that's brilliant that this updates the database, but I can actually change this here as well. So if I wanted to update this, I'll go to edit field here and I'll go to ++, update that. Now I've saved it here, but it is going to get overridden, but it should change for a brief moment. But if I refresh it one more time, it's going to go back to Freddie Mercury. And that is the basics of Firebase and Firestore, and how quickly you can get set up in React and start building real-time databases with it to integrate into your application.